Welcome! By now you should have completed the Icebreaker activity for the Growing Up Wild unit. I hope you had fun deciding if your animal was wild or not wild. Did any of you decide that your animal could be both? This activity comes from one of the units in the Growing Up Wild guide called What's Wild on pages 22 and 23 of the guide. This unit is designed to help children distinguish between animals that are wild and animals that are not wild. Animals that are wild are called wildlife. Wildlife may range in size from microscopic amoeba to whales, and may vary in behavior from timid and docile to aggressively ferocious. Animals that are not wild are called domesticated animals. Farm animals and pets are some examples of domesticated animals. One of the activities in this unit that can be used with a group of children at circle time is a sorting activity. Gather a variety of plush or plastic animals, or you can also use the animal picture cards that are found in the guide, which I like to laminate for use in the classroom. As a group, sort the animals into baskets according to whether children think the animals are wild or not wild. In some instances, the line between wild and not wild may be unclear. If children bring up examples like these, invite them to discuss it and come to a conclusion. It may be that you add a third basket for animals that fit into both categories, wild and not wild. Depending on the age level of the children in your classroom, another activity that I have used is a version of the game Who Am I?, where a laminated picture of an animal is taped onto the back of each student. And you can see that here in the next picture. Here's an example of the laminated card taped onto the back of an educator. Students have to walk around asking each other questions to determine the animal taped on their back. Once they have figured out their animal, they then decide if the animal is wild or not wild. As part of this activity, I also like to utilize a Venn diagram, which you learned about in the last unit in GEMS. You can use the Venn diagram to group the animals into two categories, wild and not wild, as shown here in this next picture. You can see an example of the Venn diagram that we created, and on one side you'll see it says wild, and on the other it says not wild. The overlapping area in the middle would include animals that could be both wild and not wild. For example, the pig that is shown here might also be found in the wild in the form of a wild boar. Again, this diagram will vary with each group of children depending on their prior knowledge and experience. This can be an area of rich discussion in the classroom, as it gives the class an opportunity to define the difference between a wild animal or a not wild animal. I hope you had fun doing the Icebreaker activity.